know how else to put this. Nintendo Switch 2 is breaking all the records, and it continues to break records as more and more official sales data comes in. Now, I will note, we haven't heard Nintendo speak directly at this point. They have a financial meeting at 10 a.m. Japan Standard Time, which is going to be later on tonight, but they did drop their financials in the middle of the night last night, like they always do, just the meeting isn't the same time. So there's going to be additional commentary on this to come later. There's going to be a Q&A as well, an investors Q&A tonight. But for right now, we actually have the official sales data for the Nintendo Switch 2 and just the Switch and just Nintendo in general for this fiscal year through the month of September. Remember, Nintendo's fiscal year begins in April. So it goes January, February, March is the fourth quarter of their prior fiscal year, and then April, May, June, and then July, August, September. So we have 5 months worth of sales data for Nintendo Switch 2, and man, let's make a couple notes here. Let's make just a couple notes. Nintendo is reporting their data as sell-in, not sell-through. So what's the big difference between sell-in and sell-through? Well, sell-in is the amount of units Nintendo has sold in to the market. So this means retail, right? So the amount of units they've actually sold to retail. So for Nintendo, a sell-in is actually a completed sale because they've already been paid for those units. However, it is not sell-through. Sell-through is how many customers have actually purchased an item. Now, these numbers are usually never the same. And yes, obviously stores hold stock over the amount of sales there actually are. But it is notable, the sell-in is so incredibly high that while we don't know what the sell-through is, it must be incredibly high as well, because there's no way retail would hold on to the sheer amount of units that we're talking about with sell-in. So that's something to keep in mind. That's true with the software sales as well. So this is all just to let you guys know that, hey, this data is not sell-through, but it does count as a literal sale for Nintendo. And I don't know how to put this. If you wanted Nintendo Switch 2 to fail and you were hoping that this quarter before holidays was going to show that, I don't think you're going to have a good day today. That being said, folks, we are giving away 5 copies of Kirby Air Riders. I believe the Age of Imprisonment giveaway technically ended yesterday, or maybe it's today. That one might still be active as well. If not, I haven't drawn winners yet. That's why I don't know. But if not, you can maybe enter the Age of Imprisonment stuff as well. All that's down in the pinned comment or the description. Let's go ahead and get into the sales data. And we're going to start not with Nintendo's official websites. We'll get there. But starting with Eurogamer, because they're tracking data from other places as well, not just the Switch 2, and to give us a picture of a pretty interesting headline. In its first few months on sale, Switch 2 outpaced PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and the original Switch, and Nintendo only expects things to get better. That's right, it is still, right now, the fastest selling console of all time. That hasn't stopped. People thought maybe it would fall behind PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and no longer be the fastest selling, but that is not the case. So Nintendo has increased its sales forecast for starters. Huge increase, by the way. The full year unit forecast for Switch 2 hardware has been increased by 4 million units to 19 million units, and the software by 3 million units to 48 million units. So both their hardware and software projections have been increased. The hardware projection seeing a much greater percentage increase. That's right. Nintendo no longer expects to sell 15 million this fiscal year. They expect to sell 19 million, which is really in line with what some analysts were saying they were seeing out there, where they were going right around 20 million. All right, as we go in here, as of the 30th of September 2025, the Switch 2 has sold 10.36 million units. Nintendo revealed this means the company has shifted a total of 4.54 Switch 2 hardware units during the 3 months ending the 30th of September this year. To put that in perspective, 4.54 million units in the second quarter is unmatched by any other console. No console in its second quarter has ever done those kind of numbers. Additionally, the forecast for Nintendo Switch hardware has been decreased by 500,000 units to 4 million units, and software has been increased by 20 million units to 125 million units. The original Switch, which first released back in 2017, has sold 154.01 million units. We're not focusing on the Switch sales too much. It's highly likely by now it's already probably surpassed the DS, but we'll have to wait and see. If nothing else, it should be past the DS after the next fiscal quarter. And then the only console left in its way, if you want to just talk about, lifetime sales, will be the PlayStation 2. Will it ever catch the PlayStation 2? I don't know. Time will tell. Now, according to the latest financial reports, Nintendo's best-selling console is the DS still, but the DS as of September has sold 154.02. That's right. That's why I said if you count just Japan sales alone, it's already surpassed DS, but nothing's official yet until Nintendo drops the numbers. Now, you get to the hardware sales and all that, you can see obviously where this is at, man, almost 1.5 billion for Switch. That's crazy. Anyways, scrolling down here, if you compare to other consoles in the same launch time, you can see just how impressive these stats actually are. PlayStation 4 managed 7.5 million sales in the same time frame, with the PS5 achieving 7.8 million. The original Switch shifting just under 5 million, 4.7 million to be precise. Looking ahead to full 12-month figures, Nintendo's target of 19 million Switch 2 sales will put the new console comfortably ahead of the original Switch, which managed just over 14 million, and PlayStation 4, clocking in at 13.5 million, and the PlayStation 5, which had a peculiarly similar trajectory to its predecessor at 13.4 million. Elsewhere in Nintendo news, earlier this week it was reported a trailer for Mario Galaxy movie could be attached to screenings for Wicked. So, guys, that's incredible. Like, think about this. It's so far ahead. I don't even know how to process this. Like, those numbers are incredible, but we're not done, of course, because we need to go look at the actual financial report from Nintendo to get game sales data and more. So we have the financial explanatory material here for the second quarter. Again, they haven't actually had the meeting yet. They just released the material before the meeting, but you can see obviously, all their sales, their profits, all that stuff. Obviously, they do note in here that their profit margins are lower because there is a lower profit margin on Switch 2 hardware compared to Switch hardware. So, if you want to look at that kind of stuff, if you care about the actual percentages and how much Nintendo's actually making, you can look at it as, it decreased a little bit percentage wise. Yes, because they're building the install base of Switch 2 and it's just not as profitable. That's the way all new console generations are, by the way. But let's get to some of the actual sales data here, because this is what we care about, obviously. Obviously, the net sales are way, way up. All right. So here's where you see their consolidated financial forecast, where they see the increase to 19 million and the decrease on the Switch. So going down 500,000, but gaining 4 million on the other end. I think Nintendo's very, very happy to see those Switch 2 numbers, needing to up their projections on both ends. Obviously, the software attach rate isn't quite what Nintendo thought it might be, but even despite that, they still think they had to up their software rate there. This is a little over 2 per unit is what they're predicting. So we'll see. But yeah, Nintendo having to up their projections. I said Nintendo would probably update their projections if Paul Gale's numbers were correct about it being 8.6 million in August and obviously north of 9 million in September. So yeah, I am very happy to see these numbers, and I think Nintendo's happy with them as well. Now, my happiness isn't that I'm like, oh my God, this is so exciting. Like, guys, I can't even believe it. Oh my God. No, it's more so I like the system. So it doing well means more games will come to it. That's basically it. That's my extent of care. But there's also the fact that, certain individuals have been saying that this isn't what's actually happening and it's much worse. And they'll spin doctor it because of sell in and sell through. We all know it. That being said, let's continue because we haven't even got to the software sales yet and the business highlights. So here's where the sales come in. We see 9.57 million so far for Mario Kart World. That's roughly a 92% attach rate. Absolutely incredible attach rate. No surprise. Most of that's probably from the bundle. 3.49 million for Bonanza. That is incredible. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe obviously still pulling some numbers there on Switch at 1.37 million, and Jamboree at 1.16, probably seeing a bit of a boost due to the Switch 2 editions. Now, one thing I want to talk about with the Switch 2 editions here for a moment, I just want to bring this up because I got to clarify something when you look at this sales data. The Switch 2 edition physical sales are counted for Switch 2, but the Switch 2 edition digital sales are counted for Switch 1, and any of the, like if you just bought the expansion pack, that's not counted for either system. So I just wanted to point this all out because, some people are like, well, maybe those software sales would be, are kind of low. Well, maybe they're actually a little bit higher, but like digital purchases of the Switch 2 edition were not included. Just food for thought. Obviously, all this is before Mario Galaxy and Pokemon Legends. That'll be in the next financial report. But I'm just pointing that out. Like, Nintendo clarified this in a prior financial report, how they are counting Switch 2 editions. So yeah, we're not getting the full Switch 2 editions, all of them purchase counting for Switch 2. And I think it's because Nintendo realized people could be buying the Switch 2 editions digitally on their Switch 1 before they buy a Switch 2. So yeah, anyways, they're not counting it really as a Switch 2 sale. It's weird. Don't ask me why Nintendo's counting it that way. I would figure if you bought the Switch 2 edition, even on a Switch 1, that you would want to count that sale like you do physical, but Nintendo's not doing it that way. I don't know why. I'm sure somebody at Nintendo can probably explain the logic behind that. Anyways, as we go down here, you obviously the quarterly hardware sales, yada yada, skyrocketing. All right, so let's get into some of the notes here. Although hardware sales has decreased compared to the high demand seen immediately following the launch of Switch 2 during the first quarter, performance remained strong with sales of 4.54 million units during the second quarter. Nintendo Switch 2 was launched on June 5th, has surpassed 10 million cumulative units sold in the approximately 4 months through the end of September. Additionally, sales of Switch hardware totaled 1.89 million. For Switch 2 software, Mario Kart World, obviously at the same time, combined with the hardware, Duck Hunt Bonanza released in July. Lots of great sales there. That's pretty cool. Now, obviously, we can get down to some of this other stuff here. We're seeing some of their digital sales and all that. We can see the digital sales are showing a 43.2 to 42.4 for your download-only software and your download versions of packaged software. And then you can go with the quarterly trends. 51.2% might be, I guess their trend there. I'm trying to figure out if this is comparing digital and physical. It doesn't look like this is a comparison of digital and physical here. Anyways, digital sales for the first half of the fiscal year decreased by 2.8% year on year to 155.5 billion yen, and the proportion of digital sales decreased by 1.8 points to 54. So yeah, there you go. Looks like about 54.5% is roughly the digital to physical rate. All right, cool. So we have that. Also, some notes here. Net sales from software bundled with hardware is entirely classified as hardware sales. Okay. As a result, although bundled software such as Mario Kart World is included in the number of software units sold, the corresponding revenue is not recognized as software sales. So they're counting the revenue as hardware. That's just how they're splitting the revenue. When calculating digital sales of Nintendo software is recognized as gross sales, while sales of software released by other software publishers are recognized as net sales. For software released by other publishers, the sales commissions that Nintendo receives based on contracts with the software publishers or other parties are recognized as revenue. So that's their 30% cut. They're saying the 30% cut of the third-party games we count. We don't count the entire sale. We count the 30% cut. Okay, cool. Then they have all the reference materials where they go over things, some of the year-end dividends and all this. This is just stuff that shareholders obviously care about if they're getting dividends, how big the dividends are going to be, all of that per share. You can see all the sales here per region. And this is quite interesting because when we get down to the sales per region, which I believe is coming up here, right here. You can see the sales per region are quite interesting. So, what was it? I think Famitsu had the sales right around 2.1 million in Japan at the end of September. You can see here the Japan numbers are 2.35 million. Now we know it keeps selling out in Japan, so chances are, Famitsu might have overcorrected. Remember when they had to make a correction earlier because they were off by about 15% projecting the Switch 2 sales up? Well, they might have now overcorrected and now they're actually down a little bit compared to the real numbers. So 2.35 million, obviously remember, sold in, not sold through. The Americas at 3.68 million. Holy crud. Europe at 2.4. And that other category at 1.93. That other category I find to just be really interesting because that used to not be a big category for Nintendo, but that's doing some additional numbers here and really helping maintain that pace of it being the best selling ever. They're obviously growing in some markets they previously were not as successful in. So I'm really happy to see that for Nintendo because that just means more people get to enjoy Nintendo's great games like Duck Hunt Bonanza or Metroid Prime 4 coming up. It's nice just to see Nintendo expanding the market of gaming in general to new territories. All right. We don't know obviously what all those territories are. I'm assuming they include things like, China and other countries, but Nintendo doesn't break it down by country. Even the Americas, like this is North and South America, even though we know a majority of those sales are in North America. But like that's not how they do it. Japan's like the only place where they do it by country. Anyways, so it's pretty cool here, pretty incredible stuff. I think I had one more thing I wanted to show you guys. This is just also like the public facing way Nintendo has things counted. So we saw screenshots of this earlier where you see Switch 2 at 10.36 and software 20.62. And here's where you can see Switch and DS. Where is it? DS down here. 154.02, and you can see 154.01. It's obviously past ES, but we won't get that official confirmation until later. Now we have one more thing to show you guys, and that of course is updated software numbers for Nintendo Switch 2 and Switch. So you can see here for million sellers, there's just the two. Nintendo has no other published software right now that has sold a million, so Dragon Drive didn't do it. It's basically a welcome tour. It hasn't sold a million either, or it would be listed here. However, we see some updated Switch sales here. We see 69.56 for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. You see Animal Crossing at 48.62, Smash at 36.93, Breath of the Wild at 33.34, Odyssey at 29.84, likely going to be at 30 million before the end of this holiday season. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet at 27.61. Pokemon Sword and Shield at 26.96, Tears of the Kingdom at 22.15, Mario Party, Super Mario Party in particular, 21.23, New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe at 18.53. So these are just the current sales. And again, Switch 2 here, you know, it's actually kind of funny. Someone was telling me like it sold worse than Wii U. Mario Kart 8 on Wii U sold 8.46 million. On Switch 2 already, it's at 9.57. This is lifetime to date, by the way. So like, yeah, Wii U, I love the Wii U, and I don't want to like diss it, but some people were like saying Switch 2 was selling worse than that. I don't know what they're talking about. So let's get to my overall thoughts here. Obviously, these sales are absolutely incredible. There's no, two ways about it. Nintendo Switch 2 is off to the best start in console history. That's just not even hyperbole. That's not a misstatement. That is not me projecting and being some big corporate shill. That is just the facts. The Switch 2 is killing it. It's crushing it. All the negativity, all the naysaying, all the doom posting, and Switch 2 is just continuing to be amazing. Oh, because it's in stock on shelves, it means it's not selling. Or it's just in stock on shelves because Nintendo's doing something no other company's ever done before. You take it however you like it, right? I don't know about the long-term prospects of Switch 2. Of course, will it be a 100 million seller? Will it come close to Switch? Will it, sell 1.4, 1.5 billion software? These are all things that are just, we're way too early to really know or understand. But it is interesting watching Nintendo continue to post like record-breaking numbers and watching parts of the internet try to twist all these numbers to be bad, as every single, they've had 2 fiscal quarters so far, have been nothing but positive news from Nintendo, which of course Nintendo is going to present things in a positive light, but they can't lie about numbers. That's the biggest thing, is like they can't. They would get in a shitload of trouble legally if they lied about their numbers. So since they can't lie, we have to take those numbers at face value. This is unheard of. I don't even know how to describe. I kind of like ran out of words. I'm very curious to see how it gets spun, but what I'm more curious about is what this means for Nintendo's holiday. 19 million. Obviously, we have Legends EA not counted yet. They've probably already sold an extra couple million just in October worldwide, just from Pokemon. So we'll have to see, guys. This is awesome, though. Good for Nintendo. Obviously, good for prospects of more games coming to Switch 2 in the future. Obviously, when you see something selling this well, everyone's going to want their games coming on it. Hopefully Nintendo's going to start releasing the Kraken and dumping those Switch 2 dev units to everyone who wants one soon instead of holding back. I assume in 2026 maybe they'll let up and everyone could just have them, but I know they want to make sure Switch 2 isn't getting flooded and having the eShop look bad. Now, Nintendo, I would say just make a better eShop, and that's not a problem, but it's a different conversation. See, I don't like everything about Nintendo. But there's a lot of things I don't like. But I am enjoying my Switch 2, and I do love the games. So take that for what you will. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am Nathaniel Robojans from Nintendo Prime, and as always, I'll catch you in the next video.